The courtroom buzzed with the subdued hum of expectation, the sort that put tension in the very walls. The reporters rustled their papers, cameras trained on the front bench, and the gallery was filled with family members, friends, and strangers attracted to the unfolding drama. None of them were ready. Not for what was going to transpire. Meri Brown walked in with a composure that seemed forced, almost calculated. Her slate-gray suit glided silently as she walked toward the middle of the courtroom, heels clicking softly on the marble floor. In her hand she held a folder, plain pale blue, its edges sharp and angular, a folder that held a secret powerful enough to rewrite everything the public believed they knew about her family. Cody fidgeted uncomfortably in his seat. Robyn's grip on the edge of the bench tightened, eyes darting furtively towards the folder. Even the lawyers sensed it, tension in the air, heavy and relentless. No one said anything as Meri headed towards the judge's bench, laying the folder down with careful precision. The courtroom became quiet, not because of shock, but because of recognition. Whatever truth existed in that folder, it held authority. The judge cleared his throat, shattering the silence. Court will reconvene now for Session 3. In Brown family affairs in regard to guardianship and custody. Meri didn't blink. She didn't look at Cody or Robyn. She merely sat, center stage, alone with the folder before her. When she did finally speak, her voice sliced through the silence like glass. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "I would like to present new evidence into the record." A gasp worked its way across the courtroom. Harsh and abrupt, Cody's lawyer stood at once. "Objection! You weren't supposed to present this." Meri's composure didn't waver. "I wasn't obligated to inform anyone in advance. This is evidence of the truth, and the truth will not wait." The judge's eyes grew narrow, reading the folder. Slowly, he started to raise its cover, the pages weighing down on the room like a countdown to secrets spilled. And somewhere, in the silence, the tale that had been breathed in corners, the gossip never voiced, started to awaken. Because what was within that folder wasn't only documents, it was the unspoken reality of years hidden beneath smiles and cameras. It was proof. It was DNA. The courtroom leaned in, collectively holding its breath, knowing in the marrow of their bones that the moment they were about to witness could not be unseen. Meri's hand rested on the folder, fingers steady, eyes forward. She did not look at Cody, seated stiffly, jaw clenched, or Robyn, whose face was a blend of shock and terror. The room grew smaller, each beat of her heart enlarged in the stillness of the courtroom. The judge hesitated to open the first page, reading the printed words. His face, professional and inscrutable to begin with, grew distorted. Lines creased his forehead. Lips clamped together. He glanced at the page, then at Meri, then at Cody and Robyn. "This test," the judge said slowly, "was carried out under court-approved supervision." "Yes, Your Honor," Meri answered, her voice firm. "Chain of custody established. Lab accredited. The findings are conclusive." There was a faint hubbub in the gallery. Reporters leaned forward, fingers on keyboards. Some murmured to each other. "Deedna, is it what I think?" Cody's fists were clenched. Robyn's knuckles turned white. The folder rolled forward slightly as Meri nudged it, a gentle movement that felt huge to everyone in the room. "Objection!" Cody's lawyer shouted for the third time, but even he realized this was not a routine procedural motion. This was another thing. The judge held up a hand. "Is the information relevant to claims being considered?" Meri did not blink. "It is about the truth," she replied. "Deedna doesn't lie." The courtroom became heavy with tension, so palpable that one could feel it, as much as see it. All eyes were on Meri as she laid out the timeline. The inconsistencies, the forged documents, the record anomalies no one had ever challenged before. The speculation that had lingered in online chat rooms, the hushed gossip of fans and relatives alike, suddenly weighed more. No longer was this guesswork. This was evidence, legal and undeniable. Cody stood abruptly, voice cracking with anger. "This is outrageous. You're attempting to embarrass us." Meri remained seated, calm, unshaken. Her gaze held the room captive, her quiet intensity louder than any shout. The judge's gavel struck once, a gunshot of authority. Silence returned. "This test," Meri continued, "confirms what has long been hidden. The subject child, is biologically mine. A collective gasp ran through the room. Robyn's hand shot up to her mouth. Cody went pale. The gallery breathed in shock. The burden of decades of secrecy, manipulation, and covert truths rested upon all of them at once. And amidst that silence, it was evident. The courtroom was no longer merely a room. It had become a stage for revelation, confession, and the ultimate reckoning. The courtroom was suspended in a stillness that felt almost sacred. Every person present sensed it. This moment would change everything. Meri's words had landed like a gavel of their own, reverberating through the room. Robyn's eyes were wide, lips parted, her composure cracking in slow motion. Cody's fingers drummed the surface beneath the table, but his chest heaved and fell with frantic speed, giving away the serenity he attempted to wear. "Explain yourself, Mrs. Brown," the judge demanded, voice unshaken but with the gravity of anticipation. Meri took a measured breath. "Your Honor, I was silenced for years. For years, my voice was waved away. I attempted to let it go, to keep the peace, to uphold appearances. But the truth cannot stay hidden forever." She edged the folder closer, the motion slow, ritualistic almost. The judge opened it again, rifling through pages of documents, emails, records, and test results. Each page hummed with tension, each sheet a brick in a dam that was about to break. Cody could no longer sit down. He stood up abruptly, voice trembling, fingers accusingly pointed. "This is a lie. You are attempting to rewrite history." Meri's eyes came up, colliding with his, in a sharp, unyielding stare. "I am offering facts, Cody. Facts that the documents and DNA validate. This isn't about rewriting history. It is about uncovering what has already occurred." Robyn's hand trembled against the table. Mascara smudged under her eyes. How could you wait so long?" She breathed softly to herself. Meri's voice was steady, but each sentence was a blow of stone upon hammer. "Because I needed proof, because I needed certainty. And now that I have it, the world must know the truth. The child, you swore, Robyn, he is mine, biologically, legally, unquestionably." The courtroom responded in unison. Gasps, soft whispers, scribbles from reporters filling notebooks. The air was so thick that even the walls slanted to the side, leaning in to catch what was to come. Cody's expression shifted from shock to hysteria. He paced, shouting, You don't get it. This alters everything. It is about the contracts, the network, the image." The judge came down hard on his gavel. "Mr. Brown, sit. The court will not be interrupted." Meri didn't stir. She didn't flinch. She simply let the truth speak for itself. The folder, the DNA, the evidence, all of it now dominated the space. In that instant, it became painfully clear. The court was no longer a neutral space. It had become the battlefield where lies, deception, and long, hidden secrets would finally confront the light. Meri's calm presence in the courtroom contrasted sharply with the storm raging around her. But as she talked, the room around her melted away, replaced by recollections of a past that others saw only partially. It started years before, in a little Flagstaff house. Rain pounded against the tin roof. The Browns hadn't yet divided into two separate households. Money was tight, tempers tighter. Meri sat hunched at the kitchen table, her eyes scanning stacks of bills, her hands trembling with exhaustion, not from physical fatigue, but from the weight of everything she had to manage alone. Cody entered without knocking, phone in hand, grin plastered across his face. "Good news," he said. "Robyn's pregnant." Meri's pen slipped from her hand. "Pregnant," she repeated, blinking, struggling to comprehend the timeline. Cody laughed, the hollow, mocking laugh she would learn to hate. "It is a blessing. You should be thankful for her." But Meri did not smile. She regarded him, confusion and suspicion churning inside her. "How the timeline doesn't," Cody interrupted. "Don't start." That evening, doubt crept into Meri's mind. Something wasn't right. Dates, records, conversations, all out of sync. And so quietly, meticulously, she began to observe, to record, to track. Years passed: miscarriages, missed appointments, hints of documents altered, signatures manipulated, and always a persistent whisper in the back of her mind: the child she was meant to raise was not the one being presented to the world. The courtroom seemed to shrink as Meri's memory continued. She envisioned herself in unspoken combat, observing the network's cameras record instances she was not a part of, laughing for the world and wearing a personal sorrow no one could perceive. Then the message, a flash of verification, from a laboratory technician who detected discrepancies in tests, who quietly assured that the reports did not align with the official reports. It was a soft voice, easily dismissed, but it set off a domino effect. Meri had waited, gathered evidence, and verified her suspicions beyond any shadow of doubt. The DNA test she now presented to the judge was not merely a piece of paper. It was years of truth at last, distilled into irrefutable fact. The courtroom observed her, none the wiser to the complete extent of her journey but sensing its weight with each whisper, each gulped breath from the onlookers. There was the unspoken consensus. This was more than just a case. It was a reckoning. The courtroom fell silent, heavy with air. All eyes were on Meri, all minds struggling to take in the news. The open blue folder seemed heavy, heavy as stone upon the room. Cody's jaw was clenched, fists curling and uncurling under the table. He stood abruptly, pacing like a caged animal, voice trembling with both fury and panic. This is impossible. You're trying to rewrite everything. You're trying to ruin us." Meri didn't flinch. She remained seated, posture straight, hands folded neatly atop the folder. Her calm contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding her. The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Brown, sit. This court will not tolerate interruptions." Cody's eyes flicked to Meri, a combination of anger and shock. "How could you? Wait this long? Wait all these years? This should have never happened, this. You can't do this." Meri's words sliced through the storm. "I waited because I needed proof. I waited because I needed certainty. And now that I have it, no one can deny the truth." Robyn's control was breaking down. Her hands trembled, mascara running under her eyes, and she leaned forward, speaking rapidly to her lawyer. We didn't. She can't. This isn't fair." Meri's gaze darted to Robyn, hard and unblinking. "Fairness doesn't alter reality. Evidence is not concerned with fairness. The child involved is biologically mine. That is not my opinion. That is fact." The room collectively held its breath. Journalists feverishly wrote down facts, camera shutters snapped, and each susurrus was magnified in the charged atmosphere. Even the bailiff fidgeted, his instincts telling him this courtroom had become something more than a court of law. It became a platform for the unspooling of concealed realities. The judge coughed, tone measured but weighted with gravitas. "Mrs. Brown, your records, your DNA records, they are persuasive. The court acknowledges their significance. We will go ahead with complete review and testimony." Cody's face twisted. Undefined Hay waved his hands wildly at Robyn, at the papers, at the gallery, as though assigning blame could erase what had been uncovered. "Undefined, you don't get it. Undefendethis isn't merely about DNA. Undefended is about contracts. It is about the network. It is about all that we've established." Meri's hand shifted fractionally, pushing the folder in the direction of the judge. Undefendivre motion was calculated like a metronome dictating the rhythm of truth. Networks and contracts can't wipe out biological reality. They can't retype identity. They can mess with appearance, but not genes. The courtroom breathed a collective sigh of relief. Noaxis, the air was charged with tension, each pulse sounding within the hollowed-out silence. Noaxis, and in that frozen tension, it was clear. No one would exit this room unaffected. Meri leaned forward a bit, her eyes on the judge. The blue folder was more than a folder. It was a truth vault, a painstakingly collected chain of documents, emails, medical records, and supporting evidence that had taken years to collate. "Your Honor," she started, voice firm, "this folder holds evidence of the forgery of legal and family documents, including DNA verification, custody applications, and letters showing deliberate concealment of the real identity of the child." The judge grasped the first document, reading the lines slowly. Every page he flipped seemed more burdensome than the previous one. Every signature, every scribble, a further step into a secret history that had been kept locked behind smiles and television cameras. Cody's eyes became wide as the judge stopped at a notarized form relinquishing custody under duress. He began to open his mouth, but the gavel struck hard. "Mr. Brown, sit. Order must be preserved." Meri didn't blink. She went on. "These records demonstrate more than mere neglect or administrative mistake. They disclose intentional falsification of documents, manipulation of the legal process, and misrepresentation to the network, the public, and to this court." Robyn's hands trembled as she glanced over at Cody. For the first time, a look of fear registered in her eyes. She spoke softly to her lawyer, but her words were drowned out by the tension rippling through the room. A back row reporter poised his pen above a notepad. Cameras snapped. Whispers flowed like a wave through the gallery. Each and every eye in the room was fixed upon Meri, whose serene demeanor only served to heighten the seriousness of the proof she offered. The judge pushed his glasses up and looked at the report of the DNA with furrowed brows. "Mrs. Brown, the results are a 99.97% maternal match, backed up by a second mitochondrial test. You are the biological mother." Meri nodded once. "Yes, Your Honor. And I have further evidence of the intentional falsification of the child's official papers. This is not just a mistake. It is a history of cover-up that goes on for years." Cody's body stiffened. He attempted to interject, but the judge shut him up once again. "This court will not accept obstruction. You will stay seated." Robyn sat pale, faced with eyes wide open, and she breathed, barely above a whisper. How did she know all of this? Meri's response was unflappable, tranquil. "Because I observed, I gathered, I corroborated. The truth does not disappear because somebody wishes it would." For an instant, the whole courtroom was frozen in silence. The bricks of years of deception and manipulation weighed upon it like a physical presence. Every page in Meri's folder had a story, and the room was about to hear them all. Meri's calm voice filled the courtroom, each word deliberate, carrying the weight of years spent uncovering truths others had tried to bury. "Your Honor," she began, "the falsification is not limited to custody documents. Emails, internal memos, and correspondence with network executives indicate deliberate efforts to misrepresent my role as the child's mother." She pushed a stack of carefully organized papers toward the judge. "These communications show a coordinated attempt to erase my parental authority and to construct a false narrative of instability and incapacity." Cody leaned forward abruptly, eyes flashing with panic. "This is manipulation. You're twisting the context. These are normal communications." Meri did not glance at him. She spoke to the judge. "Ordinary communications don't include falsifying signatures and revising official documents, Your Honor. Ordinary communications don't change the identity of a child for more than a decade." Robyn's face showed a crack in her veneer. Her hands trembled anxiously, clasping the side of the bench. She whispered to her attorney, but Meri's voice carried over them. "Exhibit B," Meri continued, holding up a folder with a red tab, "shows the initial transfer of care documents. Note the differences in signatures. The alterations were made without my consent, under duress, and with the intent to mislead the network and the court." The judge leaned in, scrutinizing the documents. He drummed his fingers on the desk as he looked through the pages. "Mrs. Brown, are these discrepancies in signatures verifiable as forgeries?" Meri nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Forensic examination verifies that the signature on the document giving custody over to Robyn was not mine. My signature is below it, rubbed out and overwritten." Gasps spread throughout the courtroom. Reporters murmured among themselves, cameras snapping, recording each face. The gallery collectively drew breath, the atmosphere heavy with tension and incredulity. Cody went white, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He opened his mouth to speak, but the judge held up a hand. "Sit, Mr. Brown. You will get your turn, not now." Meri spoke, her voice steady. "This evidence depicts a clear and consistent trend, concealment, coercion, and falsification. Each choice, each assertion made to this court or the network, was designed to conceal from the child, from me, and from the public." Robyn shifted minimally, her gaze wide and unflicking. She whispered something inaudible, her poise broken. The courtroom held its breath, every heartbeat amplified, every breath a testament that for the first time, Years of covert manipulation were being exposed. The judge's gaze darted back to the papers and then to Meri. "Mrs. Brown, you have shown compelling documents. The court will need to subject these documents to further scrutiny, but their consequences are severe. We will proceed with testimony and verification." Meri's hand rested lightly on the folder, steady, composed, as if she were holding not just papers, but the culmination of years of resilience, observation, and truth. The courtroom was silent, anticipation hanging like a heavy fog. Every person present understood that the evidence in Meri's folder was only the beginning. What came next could redefine the family structure but also public opinion as a whole. The judge cleared his throat. "We will now take testimony from people who are able to substantiate Mrs. Brown's allegations. Call your first witness." Meri looked around the room. She did not need to cast her eyes out into the gallery to know that each reporter, each lawyer, each member of the Brown family was tense. Her placid presence was a stark contrast to the whirl of muffled rumor which coursed through the crowd. The first witness stepped forward, a former family aide, a person who had worked intimately with the Browns for years. Their hands trembled with each step as they swore on the stand, but when they gazed at Meri, their face hardened in resolve. "I was present at many of the custody hearings," the witness began. "I saw documentation being falsified. I saw signatures that didn't belong there, and I was told, directly, to remain silent." A buzz went through the courtroom. Cody blushed, and Robyn's eyes widened in shock. She spoke harshly to her lawyer, but it hardly registered above the tension humming in the air. The judge waved a hand, muffling the whispers. "Facts only, please." The witness nodded. "Here are emails, memos, and internal memos. They show intentional doctoring of records and orders to give false accounts to Mrs. Brown and the child. I have submitted copies to the court." Meri nudged a pile of papers towards the judge. He accepted them, flipping through cautiously. Every page uncovered levels of deceit, directives to deceive, reports of altered files, and messages specifically crafted to keep the truth at bay. The judge's forehead creased. These documents indicate a calculated scheme to cover up the child's real name and parentage. "That is true, isn't it?" The witness nodded, voice steady in spite of their jitters. "Yes, Your Honor, and it was ongoing for years." Cody's jaw tightened. He tried to say something, but the gavel shut him up before anything would come out. "This court will not be interrupted. Sit down." Robyn's hands were over her mouth, shooting glances between Cody and the judge. For the first time, fear and awareness broke through defiance. Meri was still calm, her hands resting lightly on the edge of the folder. Each witness upheld her account. Each page supported the painstakingly compiled truth. The burden of years of silence, of watching and uncomplaining suffering, began to weigh down on all who stood there. The judge gazed sternly at Meri. "Mrs. Brown, the evidence and records you've submitted reveal a serious and intentional withholding of parental identity. We will now go on to investigate other witnesses and forensic confirmation. This court does note the seriousness of these charges." The gallery appeared to tremble as one. Each observer understood that what had started as a legal hearing had transformed into a revelation of long-hidden truths, and at the center of it all, Meri remained composed, resolute, and unyielding. The courtroom's tension thickened as the next witness was called, a longtime friend of Meri's, someone who had observed the subtle fractures in the family long before they were visible to the public. The friend was a silent but authoritative presence, their eyes shining with years of repressed verities. "I have known Mrs. Brown for more than a decade," the witness began, voice firm. "I saw she was troubled when she discovered the child in question was being brought up under false pretenses. I saw intimate conversations where she was misled, gaslighted, and silenced by Robyn and Cody." Rolling murmurs swept through the courtroom. Cody's face constricted, each muscle strained. Robyn's eyes flickered out to her lawyer, lips compressed into a tight line. She felt the weight of the courtroom bearing down on her, her erstwhile controlled demeanor shattering under the gaze of those who had watched her neatly choreographed story for so long. The judge interrupted, his tone controlled but firm. "Please concentrate on particular instances, present evidence if any, to substantiate these allegations." The witness nodded. "I have journals, letters, and photographs chronicling intimate moments where Meri was systematically excluded from decisions regarding the child's life. These records, combined with the evidence already presented, show a conscious process of manipulation and deception on the part of Cody and Robyn." Meri pushed another set of folders in front of the judge. Each folder held meticulously indexed records, timelines, and corroborative evidence. The judge scrutinized them, brows furrowed in concentration. Page after page was a puzzle piece, exposing the concerted effort to hide the truth. Cody's fists were clenched under the table. He opened his mouth to protest, but the gavel fell down and stunned him into silence. "Mr. Brown, keep your seat. The court will get to you in due time." Robyn shifted in her seat, having lost the previous confidence. Her fingers tapped nervously against the bench, a subtle tremor betraying her anxiety. The witness continued, "I observed private communications where Cody instructed Robyn on how to present the child to the public and the network, deliberately misrepresenting Meri's maternal role. These communications are time-stamped, and their authenticity can be verified." The judge leaned forward, reviewing the documents meticulously. "Mrs. Brown, your claims are gaining substantial support through multiple sources. The court believes these claims, and they deserve to be fully examined." Meri remained steady, an island of calm amidst the tempest raging within Kody and Robyn. Each paper, each statement, each hesitant nod of truth weighted the courtroom with irrefutable heft. Tension ceased to be merely legal. It became intimate. Now the witness was free to move. The gallery collectively breathed a sigh. The secret history of manipulation, deception, and hidden parentage was unfolding, and no one could remain oblivious to it. Meri braced herself a little in her chair, hands clasped over the folder, steadfast even as the atmosphere in the room was taut with anticipation. She had waited years for this moment, for the truth to be at last revealed, acknowledged, and documented. The atmosphere in the room was heavy with anticipation. Each whisper and rustle of paper seemed to be magnified, each set of eyes drawn to the drama that was unfolding. The next witness was going to be introduced, and the courtroom collectively held its breath. The bailiff stepped forward, a thin, nondescript envelope in his hand. It was handed directly to the judge, who looked at it with the gravitas of one opening a Pandora's box. "Mrs. Brown, this is being presented as evidence in your case," he stated, looking up. "Are you familiar with its contents?" Meri nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. This has additional documentation and forensic validation of the DNA test, with previously unsealed communications that show intentional tampering with my parental rights." The judge slowly opened the envelope, pulling out a pile of papers. Every page was stamped, signed, and dated. As he leafed through them, the courtroom was deathly quiet. Even the journalists, bred to live on mayhem, appeared paralyzed. Cody shifted uncomfortably in his seat, every fiber taut. Robyn's hands gripped the edge of the bench, wide eyes showing the fear she had struggled to keep hidden. The judge's face was unreadable, but the furrow in his forehead grew increasingly deep as the seconds ticked by. Meri spoke quietly, steadily, unshockably. "Your Honor, these records indicate the timeline of the child's alleged custody changes, with my constant efforts to assert my rights. Every effort was an obstruction, misinformation, and in others' cases, coercion." The judge raised an eyebrow, his piercing gaze locking onto Kody and Robyn. "Are these accusations true, Mr. Brown?" Cody's mouth opened, then he shut it again. The gavel tapped lightly against the bench, calling for silence. "This court will hear no interruptions. Go on, Mrs. Brown." Meri inhaled a deep breath. "The forensic examination of the DNA test verifies a 99.97% maternal match. This child born under another mother's name is biologically mine, and the documents here, supported by witnesses, emails, and signed affidavits, prove intentional concealment of this fact." A collective gasp ran through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled industriously, some muttering under their breath to other reporters, their cameras filming the expressions of the family members live. Robyn's face went white. She mouthed something to Cody, but the words were lost on deaf ears. The seriousness of the evidence had made even their hushed words ineffective. The voice of the judge broke through the strained atmosphere. "Mrs. Brown, the records, DNA testing, and testimony of witnesses collectively indicate an intentional and concerted attempt to fake parental identity and interfere with legitimate custody. The court will immediately move forward to authenticate and chain of custody all documents, but the early signs are troubling deeply." Meri sat up, poised, her gaze steady. She understood that the truth was no longer buried, no longer pliable. The weight of years of silence, dishonesty, and manipulation were finally being met head-on in the presence of the law. In the rear of the courtroom, the gallery leaned forward, feeling that the most important moments of this hearing were being played out. And as the judge went through the papers, a quiet understanding moved through all of them. What had long been personal, hidden and controlled, was now coming out into open clarity. The air in the courtroom was charged with anticipation, electric. Each set of eyes was riveted on the bench, anticipating the next bombshell. Meri appeared calm, hands clasped over her folder, inner storm brewing behind her placid face. Kody and Robyn, on the other hand, were clearly coming apart. The judge was interrupted from reading papers, his eyes scanning the courtroom before settling on Cody. "Mr. Brown," he said slowly, "the evidence presented to this court indicates intentional misrepresentation of parental identity, tampering with custody documents, and possible forgery. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Cody clenched his jaw. He opened his mouth, his voice hesitating at first. "Your Honor, I didn't." The gavel came down hard, cutting him off. "You will speak plainly when you are asked to do so, Mr. Brown." No interruptions, no evasions. Meri leaned forward a bit, her gaze never wavered from Cody's. "Your Honor, the chronology is unmistakable. All of the documents, all of the witness accounts, all of the email, all indicate deliberate hiding and deception. He knew what was going on, and yet he let the false story continue for years." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Robyn put her hand to her mouth, she whispered urgently to her lawyer, but the courtroom was now a matter of irrefutable fact. The judge went on, scanning the forensic reports. The results from the DNA test show a 99.97% maternal match. These custody transfer forms, when correlated with witness testimony, show intentional misrepresentation of legal parentage. "Mr. Brown, the court requires a complete and honest report of your participation." Cody's shoulders dipped inward, the burden of secrecy bearing down. He began to speak once more, softer, as if to himself. I wish to shield the family, the network, the brand." Meri's voice pierced the tension, measured but unyielding. "You shielded your reputation, not the family, and definitely not the child." Lies were simpler than the truth, and now all the lies are revealing themselves. The judge held up his hand to silence. Even her. "Mr. Brown, this is your chance. Be straightforward. The court needs a truthfulness under oath." Swallowing hard, then speaking, his voice raw with a mixture of fear and resignation. "I lied, I forged documents, I deceived the network, and I let another woman take a child that is biologically Meri's. I did it to protect myself, the family reputation, and the contracts. I didn't think anyone would ever discover it." The courtroom exploded, not with sound but with shocked, silent recognition. Each individual present realized the seriousness of his confession. Robyn stared, aghast. She had no words, no defenses. Meri sat stock still, a neutral mask on her face. Though a storm of vindication raged within, the long-buried truth was finally revealed. The burden of years of lies now squarely fell on the shoulders of Cody and Robyn. The gavel came down again, slicing through the tension like a knife. "Let the record indicate Mr. Brown has confessed to forging custody records, lying about parentage, and interfering with Mrs. Brown's legal rights. This court will conduct a full examination of all documents and communications immediately so that everyone is held fully accountable. Even the smallest sound has ceased." An oppressive silence filled the courtroom. The drama that had been brewing behind closed doors for more than a decade now was finally out in the open, unquestionable, and irreversible. The courtroom felt as though it was frozen in time. Every eye, every camera, every sound device recorded the truth as it unfolded. Cody's admission had tipped the scales of power in the room, and now everyone's attention was on the consequences, the reckoning that could no longer be put off. Meri sat very still, her back straight, her hands clasped quietly over her folder. She didn't rejoice, she didn't mock. All she did was breathe. The years of silence, manipulation, and erasure had led her to this point, and she had at last been heard. The judge leaned forward, pushing his glasses up his nose as he reviewed the papers again. "Given the admission by Mr. Brown and the corroborating evidence submitted, the court will take immediate action to secure all assets, verify all custody and trust documents, and ensure that the child's legal and biological parentage is accurately reflected. A collective gasp spread through the gallery. Reporters whispered furiously, typing notes into their devices, already imagining headlines. All the cameras focused on Meri, recording her calm but firm presence. Robyn held on to the bench with shaking hands. Her eyes flicked anxiously between Cody, Meri, and the judge. For the first time, the illusion she had created over the years, the perfectly composed image of the perfect family, was beginning to break down. Christine, sitting in the gallery, whispered to Janelle, "I can't believe this is happening." After all these years, Janelle's eyes were wide, her fingers clenched in her notebook. "The truth, finally, it is finally coming out," the judge went on, measured and deliberate. "All transactions under the Brown family, trusts that were influenced or executed under misrepresentation, will be subject to immediate forensic audit. Any shares or property transferred under duress or false pretenses will be reversed pending the court's final ruling. This includes all assets, corporate holdings, and associated business interests." Meri's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't react outwardly, but internally, she felt the long-awaited surge of validation. The years of silence, the inward battles, the rumors behind doors, they counted now. The court was now finally recognizing the injustice. Cody's head was hung low, fidgeting in his hands. The burden of his own confession, the fact that the court was about to take its actions, left him obviously shaken. He had not expected the size of his own confessions. The truth had been unleashed, and there was no going back. Robyn spoke at last, her voice quivering. This can't be happening. I didn't." The judge held up a hand. "Mrs. Brown, you will be allowed to counter once the court has confirmed all evidence presented. At the moment, proceedings are dedicated to factual examination and proper legal procedure, just to be sure." Meri took a slow breath, her eyes unflinching. She saw now that justice wasn't merely about confrontation. It was about making the truth so utterly secure that deception could never gain hold. Outside the courthouse, already the news had spread. Social media went crazy with the disclosures, DNA verifications, confessions of forged documents, the unveiling of decades of clandestine manipulation for the first time. In more than a decade, Meri Brown's voice was not merely heard, it rang out. The courtroom was still tense but focused. All the players sensed the seriousness of what had occurred. The child, whose life had been remolded by deceptions and cover-up, stood now at the focal point of the tale, and Meri, who had suffered for so many years of erasure and uncertainty, was now firmly in her position as the rightful voice in the narrative unfolding. The room had changed. What had been a courtroom thriller had become a reckoning. Meri Brown, who had been pushed aside and silenced, now had the force of truth in the palm of her hand. The judge's next statement would be the catalyst for the return of rights long withheld. "Mrs. Brown," the judge started, his tone firm but somber, "the court acknowledges your biological and legal ties with the child in question. Subject to final confirmation, you will be recognized as the legitimate parent. Custody, records, and all related legal papers will bear this out at once." A hushed gasp ran through the gallery. Meri's lips remained pressed together, a quiet determination in her eyes. The vindication was real, but this was only the beginning. She had survived years of deceit, suppression, and manipulation. Now the law was finally aligning with truth. Cody's mask slipped. His previous self-assurance, founded on manipulation and command, had collapsed completely. Robyn, seated next to him, gripped her bag, her composed veneer shattered beyond repair. They were both exposed for the first time, their authority reduced to naked responsibility. The judge went on, scanning through the evidence again. "All legal transfers, financial distributions, and trust documents that have been affected by misrepresentation shall be suspended forthwith. Forensic audit teams shall scrutinize every transfer, signature, and document to verify the integrity of the Brown Family Trust and other associated corporate entities." Christine and Janelle, sitting side by side, looked at each other. Their skepticism had become silent relief. Years of seeing Meri suffer, years of asking themselves how the truth could be concealed. Now they knew the answers. Outside court, journalists recorded every gesture. Cameras focused on Meri, not in praise but in recognition. She didn't require applause or praise. Her being, her calmness, and her steadfast position spoke louder than words could ever speak. The judge stopped, giving the weight of the announcement time to settle. "Mr. Brown," he said, looking at Cody, "based on your admissions, the court will forward these conclusions to the district attorney for potential legal proceedings, including charges of forgery, misrepresentation, and obstruction of parental rights." Cody's head dropped lower, his initial bravado substituted by a shocked silence. Robyn's lips parted, as if on the hunt for words that didn't come. The courtroom no longer had tension, it had accountability. Meri's hands rested calmly on the folder in front of her. She had no intention of gloating. This moment wasn't about revenge. It was about rectifying what had been wrong for over a decade. Every manipulated signature, every falsified document, every silenced voice was now subject to scrutiny, and the law was on her side. The judge's last words during this session were calculated and unshakable. "This court acknowledges Mrs. Meri Brown to be the legal and biological mother of the child hitherto under misrepresented guardianship. Immediate temporary orders for custody and supervision shall be implemented, with final adjudication to follow on total audit and hearing of all pertinent documents and testimonies." Meri breathed slowly. It wasn't finished. The battle for justice continued, but this was the tipping point. The child's identity, her own voice, and evidence of the Brown family's manipulation were now permanently on record. As the gavel fell, calling for a temporary recess, Meri sat, eyes straight ahead, mind focused. Outside, the media hummed with anticipation, Twitter blasted with bombshells, and television viewers worldwide waited to see what came next in what had been the most jaw-dropping sister wives' tale so far. Courtroom doors swung open, and Meri stood, her demeanor serene, yet authoritative. Each step she made was resonant with years of patient stamina and an unwavering devotion to truth. This day, the deceptions had been met. Tomorrow, justice would resume. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Not the silent tension of expectation, but the heaviness of consequences, the seriousness of revealed deception. Meri Brown stood still, her eyes firm, her hands placed atop the folder that had borne years of unfairness. This was the moment the truth finally arrived. The judge's eyes swept the courtroom, resting on each face before coming to focus on Cody and Robyn. This court recognizes that the submissions, admissions, and DNA proof presented by Mrs. Meri Brown proves not just biological parentage, but also serious misconduct insofar as custody, financial transfers, and trust documentation are concerned. Robyn's face went white. Her lips quivered. Cody's shoulders slumped under the burden of disclosure. For the first time in years, they were bereft of control. Not by innuendo, not by conjecture, but by undeniable fact. "Effective immediately," the judge added, "all properties and assets covered by fraudulent transfers will be frozen subject to forensic audit. Custody records, birth certificates, and legal documents will be amended to indicate the actual parentage and guardianship as determined by court-reviewed evidence. Additional legal remedies for misrepresentation and forgery will be instituted in accordance with law." Meri experienced a calm release inside of her. No cheering, no clapping. Only recognition of what she had gone through, the years of silence, and the validation of her unyielding truth. Christine and Janelle edged forward, providing silent encouragement. They were a steady presence, a reminder of mutual endurance. The observers in the courtroom leaned forward, as if transfixed, seeing the last demasking of a long-concealed reality. The press box exploded in silence, fingers flying across keyboards, mouths murmuring, recording everything. Headlines would spread quickly. DNA established, rights of custody returned, forged papers revealed. Social media would erupt, but all of it paled in comparison to the individual justice Meri had just obtained. The judge's last statement had closure for the time being. Mrs. Meri Brown will be legally and biologically identified as the child's mother. All concerned are reminded that future proceedings in relation to asset recovery, trust adjustments, and any criminal proceedings shall follow. This court session is adjourned. Meri closed the folder slowly. Her fingers did not tremble. Her mouth did not twist in triumph. There was just peace, a sense of truth reestablished, integrity recognized, and silence shattered. Outside the court, the world waited, cameras clicking, microphones pushed forward, but Meri navigated the throng with quiet dignity. She did not reply to questions. She did not perform for the media. She merely walked, standing in herself with the poise of a woman who had endured decades of manipulation and finally asserted her voice. Christine and Janelle trailed behind, shoulder to shoulder, their solidarity on full display. No script, no camera, just women who had survived, who had seen, and who had ultimately stood with the truth. Robyn and Cody trailed behind, in silence, their years of fraud revealed, their authority lost. Out in the car, Meri gazed at the vacant parking lot. Sun setting behind the rim of the world, for the first time, she had a stillness of closure. Not the closure of the world, not the closure of the public, but hers. The years of loss, of silence, of seeing the truth buried, had built to irrefutable recognition. Some tales never get their claps. Some wars are silent, and some truths, however buried, cannot be destroyed. Meri Brown had waited, she had suffered, and now she had risen, not for revenge, not for drama, but for herself, her daughter, and the unyielding strength of truth. As she pulled away, the courthouse fading into the distance, she kept her head held high. The act of dishonesty was over. The tale of survival, justice, and irrefutable truth was just starting.